So today I'm going to be working on this Audi Q5. I'm going to be doing the rear and front brakes and rotors, and I'll show you guys step by step how to do it. So next you're going to find your lifting points, which on the Audi is right here. You're going to leave enough room. Now sometimes you have this here and you want to put it right here so it doesn't like fall down with the weight. But yeah, so if you hear a little thump, it's just that adjusting in place. So if you don't have an impact gun, what you can do is that use a breaker bar, and you're just going to put it on here. Let me see if I can do this one-handed. You put this on here, and then you just lift it. So you're not gonna, you won't lift the car all the way. You want to make sure that it has pressure on it in order for you to take it off. If it doesn't have pressure, the tire will spin. So you need to make sure it's still on the ground to do this. So after we took the tire off, obviously you want to get the caliper pins. And if you look right here, there is a pin that holds the, a washer that holds this in place. So what you're going to do is that you're going to hold this. You can do it with a wrench, but you can also do it with the C-locks. Okay, so once you get the caliper pins off, you're going to want to remove this because it's just going to give you a little bit more room. So if you see this little tab here, let's see if I can push this in place. Take it off. Sometimes I do things with my nails just to see. There we go. So you're going to remove that, and then we can remove this. But the easiest way to remove it is to get this and lift it. And you're just going to wiggle it just because you have this here. You wiggle it up and down until it releases. Once you have the caliper off, or in order to get the caliper off, you're going to get these two pins back here, this one here and this one here. So, and what I'm going to do is that I'm going to hit this with the hammer. Now I'm not going to hit it right here. I'm going to make sure I hit it right here so I have a little bit of leverage. Okay, so I've already hit it a few times, but I'm going to show you just for viewing purposes. Make sure this is here, but when you get it to this point, you're going to make sure that you hold this here and then hit on the mallet. But it is actually loose, so I'm going to just show you how I did it. And that's how you loosen it, but you're going to put a lot of force, especially if it's rusted. Now, in order to get to the front, I actually use this breaker bar. It actually has like a bit of an angle to it, so I couldn't get it off with the other one, but this one worked perfectly because it's not hitting up here. So got that one. Okay, so after you get the caliper off, we're going to get off the rotor. So you have this one, which is a T30. I like to use something heavy because if you use it light, the rotor will spin. So what you do is, now I've already just broken this apart, but you're going to do it like this and just drop it. Now, even though the rotor pin is off, it's not going to come off easily, especially with all this rust. So what you're going to do is use a hammer. So after you get the rotor off, you want to clean any type of rust with the wire brush. So when you change out the brakes, you want to, number one, keep these in here so you can remember how it came out. And then you're going to add this onto the pad, let it dry, and then it won't squeak. You know how sometimes you get brakes and you put them on and then you're like, oh, it's squeaking. That's because they didn't lubricate this. They're going to lubricate this like so. Just over all of it. Just like that. And then what you can do is rub this against each other. Like to do it in a circular motion, and it's going to get a little bit on here, but you might have to add a little bit, but then you won't have to add as much. You see it's starting to dry. It dries pretty fast, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and then we're going to add this in here. Now you don't want to put it on before it dries because obviously you have all this black stuff on your rotor, so just make sure it dries a little bit. And you can rub it in. That's what I like to do, just so it dries a little bit faster. Now while this is drying, I'm going to go ahead and take these out. twist it a little bit. Kind of hard to do it with one hand, but I'm gonna twist this, take it out, and I'm gonna place it just like this so I know how it came out. And then I'm gonna take this one too, pull it out, and place it just like this so I know that this is how it came out. So instead, I'm not gonna get the wrong pad. I'm not gonna put it in wrong. So you just place it like that. So we're gonna change the brake hardware. Now, if you look at this one, it is a tad different. You can see actually the different size of it. And sometimes this might, if it's the wrong size, it might cause a squeaking, but I'm gonna try it anyway. And then I'll test drive it and see if it squeaks. If it doesn't squeak, then we're good. If it does, I'm gonna have to put the old hardware back in. So after further examination, I'm just going to go ahead and keep the old hardware, because if you look here, it has these little pins, but what this does is that it holds it in place. So if you see here, there is actual pin too, you can see on here. So the brakes go in between here. So you should have one side has the little pin on it, which is this right there, and then it keeps it in place on the other side. So we're going to keep the old hardware. Now once you're putting on the rotor, you're going to do this before you put the rotor on, because you need to do it front and back. But for video purposes, I'm just going to show you. Most new rotors come with like a little coating. So what you're going to do is that you're just going to use a brake cleaner, and then you're just going to spray around it, and then that's it. But you do it on both sides, and just make sure you don't touch this, because you don't want any type of residue. And then you want to make sure you line up the hose. Okay, so we got the pin lined up. Now remember just how we took it off with the little snug. You want to make sure it's on the right way, righty tighty, lefty loosey. And then obviously this is still a little bit more, but we're going to just tighten it. Remember, the rotor moves freely, so once you get it tight, you're just going to come and then do a little tight snug. That way the rotor won't move while you're doing it. And then, but don't tighten it too tight, because you don't want these to strip. Once this strips, ooh, Lord Jesus, honey, you're in trouble. So the next thing you want to do is lubricate. This is one that's pretty lubricated, but you always want to do it every time you have a brake job. Remember, this is what's pushing the calipers in, or the brakes in. So you have this. So just go ahead and lubricate it. Today we're going to use this one. I think you can get something like this at AutoZone or anything, but they'll have something. But this is one of my favorite ones just because of the nozzle. But this is what you lubricate it with. So when you put the pins back in, you want to make sure you have like a little click, and then that shows you that it's in. It's going over this little stopper right here, but that's good. And then just make sure it moves, and then we're going to tighten this up. After you've gotten the brakes, you want to make sure you torque this to 144 pounds. Now, I definitely can't do this with the camera, but just trust me, to 144 pounds, which is 196 Newton meters. It's like 44 and a half, but I don't have 44 and a half, so I'm just do 45. But this is crazy to do it upside down, because you got to lift up instead of going down. But we're going to use this bungee as well in order to give me a little bit of leverage. So try not to do it just one-handed, because it's going to be really hard. But the bungee might help. So now it's time to put the caliper back in place. Now if you look at this one, these actually move when you turn it. I can't really do it one-handed, but if you see out here, it moves. So you're just going to put that here and then work it. Now I have another tool that sits against here, but I don't have it with me, so we're just going to have to woman handle it, as I should say. We're going to put that there in those little grooves and twist.